Ivan Vasiliyevich, or Ivan the Terrible. Ivan Vasiliyevich, commonly known as Ivan the Terrible, was the last prince of Moscow and the first Tsar of Russia. He was a ruler who abolished the Moscow Principality and established the Russian Tsardom with his campaigns and conquests. He ruled Russia as Tsar of all Russia from 1547 until his death in 1584. He became the head of the Moscow Principality when he was only 3 years old. He was crowned in 1547, painting a determined, impressive and ruthless portrait. Ivan was a Russian leader with great ambitions and a high sense of revenge. His many campaigns against the Tatars were proof of this, who had a fearless and balanced personality that spread fear among his enemies. That's why Ivan killed his son in 1582 on the grounds that he had betrayed him. He expanded the Moscow Principality with various campaigns. Taking advantage of this situation, he declared himself Tsar of all Russia. Thus, the state transitioned to the Tsarist administrative system. In 1550 he organized a meeting of civil and spiritual elders. At the meeting, speeches were made on the state and church laws and regulations in force in Russia. The decision makers at this meeting were called the Honorable Committee. The Imperial Council, which played an important role in state affairs as the Tsar's closest advisors, began to fall out of favor with Ivan in 1553. Under the influence of Metropolitan Makary, he thought of himself as a ruler by the grace of God, a Tsar who was responsible for administering Russia as he wished. In 1560, Ivan's wife Anastasia died, leaving behind 2 children, Ivan and Fyodor. His wife had an influence on Ivan in every way. The death of his wife caused Ivan to dive into the world of pleasure and debauchery. Again, during this period, new women who attracted attention emerged. With their provocation, the desires and enthusiasm that he had kept inside him for a long time began to emerge. In this process, many people were sent into exile. In 1564, he left the Kremlin, taking his children, the palace servants and his entourage, and the palace treasury. This departure was a mystery in the eyes of Muscovites. A year later he wrote to nobles and spiritual leaders that he left Moscow because the nobles were in treason. This made a deep impression in Moscow, and efforts began to have the Tsar return. He finally returned to Moscow 2 months later. But even though he was 35 years old, he looked unrecognizable with an old look. As soon as he returned, he began to punish the traitors. In this way, he would take a big step towards becoming a woman and would have the opportunity to make reforms that would support women. He finally achieved these goals by establishing an administrative system called a Priknina. He continued this regime for exactly 20 years. During this period, many events were covered up as a result of bloody raids. Also during this period, Tsar Ivan, who did not hesitate to kill even his own son in 1582, died at the age of 53 while playing chess with Bogdan Belsky on March 18, 1584. For some he is a hero. For others he is one of the worst men in the world. I hope you liked the video. May you always be happy.